I am so excited to collaborate with Christina Nice today. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Deirdre. I'm excited to be here.
Do you mind giving us a quick intro into some of the roles that you've held in what you're doing now?
Sure. I am a solutions consultant now, and I've held many roles in my career. I've been in and out of the technology space and have worked as a creative, starting many fun ideas and turning them into a reality.
You've mastered the art of reading the room, and it's a skill that not many have. And we know that not everything goes to plan. So, can you share about a time when reading the room didn't work out well? What was one of your biggest fails, and how did you recover?
That's an excellent question. So, I'm not going to go into too many details about a fail, but I can share something that was like a fail for me when you're able to read the room. When someone is a non supporter, for example, when they try to sabotage or derail a call that you're on, as a solutions consultant and someone that has worked most of my career at reading the room and reading the nonverbal cues and understanding the emotional environment and dynamics in the room, I had to keep this person from interrupting and making comments that were derailing the sale to everyone else in the room, the key stakeholders. And I knew that I wasn't this person's cup of tea, and I think having the humility to understand that you're not gonna be everyone's cup of tea and to be able to make a strategic shift on the fly, and I was able to make that call go in our favor by leveraging another SC like myself who has a different personality style. And we ended up winning that deal. So, recognizing that it's not about you when things come up, you have to have the awareness to pick up on both sides.
I love that. That is very intuitive and it makes a ton of sense, right? You want to do whatever's needed to win the deal,
Correct.
and having that mindfulness and that the ability to read the room and tell that you weren't his or her cup of tea,
Yeah.
right? That's a big deal. Thank you for sharing
You're
that.
welcome.
What are things that people can learn to do so that they can get started with that skill of reading the room?
I think that learning to read the room starts with yourself. You need to master your own mind, self awareness, and understanding of your own human fails and successes first. Know thyself, in essence. I would say personal development and leaning in on the mistakes and wins of others can also accelerate this process. If you want to really learn how to master active listening, master how to win a deal, you have to know your own limitations and learn from the experiences, the fails and the successes of others. The ability to hear what they are saying, but not saying directly. The art of
Mhm.
discovery, I would say asking questions to gather the information for the answers. Reading the room is essentially about creating a connection. The classic tips, nonverbal cues, you scan the room, who's listening, who's distracted, know who your audience is. We can be prepared as much as possible in this role. It's always good to prep, but you have to be available for the unexpected. And this is essential. So do your research. If you have a VP of marketing in the room, find out their main pain points that are current. So look to connect things. I also think sometimes you have a mixed bag of folks in the room. So being able to quickly assess and understand the mood or the energy, the dynamics or the underlying currents. Excellent sellers understand these dynamics. Active listening, looking for any undertones or emotions. And context is another key point here. I think if you want to really read the room, understanding the reason why people are even in the room, the purpose will influence the dynamics. So when you get the purpose and the context down, reading the room is like the second tier of that. But you need to be able to easily adapt to behavior and to contribute with enthusiasm. So if you're in more serious settings, you need to engage in a more meaningful way. You need to mirror and match the energy and the tone of the room. I think that would be the first tip I would give, and it starts with knowing yourself.
Oh gosh, I love that. Those are really good tips for reading the room. So, once someone has got the basics down, what comes next? How does someone get better at reading the room and what additional things can they do?
Well, after you've mastered some personal development and you begin to learn from the mistakes and the successes of others, I think it's very important to ask for feedback and looking at the energy in the room, listening for the tone and any underlying currents that they may have, what they're not saying, looking for signs of frustration, things that align with active
Mhm,
listening. I would say active listening is going to help you grow
mm,
in reading the room because the better you get at listening, the more clarity that's going to come with the active listening.
that's really helpful. It sounds like you really put active listening into play and you do it in a way that you're very connected and you're listening to what they have to say, not to respond, but listening to really understand them in a deep way.
Yes, you have to get the context right or you're gonna miss the mark. I think that I learned from others' mistakes and wins. I studied the dynamics. I wanted to learn from their experiences. That was one of the best advice that I ever got was at SAP. Someone told me to learn from others' mistakes from the sellers and not to make them yourself. You're listening not to respond, exactly what you said, Deirdre, but hearing what they are saying. I am hearing you right now, for example. So when you listen past what they're saying, but really a lot of my ability to read the room and to understand the importance of the context came from learning from others' wins and mistakes and my own, respectfully.
So, what's one thing that maybe you were taught by a mentor or someone else that didn't really work out in the real world? We know that people can give great advice or great examples, and then we go to put them into practice ourselves and they don't really work. What's one thing that you were taught that didn't quite work out, and how did you adapt it to your own needs?
That is an interesting question. I'll say I'll speak to the presenter side. If you're going to sell anything or be talking to people, I've had presenting engagements where I haven't read the room, where I've been in front of an audience. I've been on film and I've said something that if you didn't understand the background or the context, it may come off a certain way. So I think one of the most critical things in any type of communication is knowing how to adapt your communication styles and being sensitive to the dynamic in the room or the dynamic of your audience. So, most of us are taught to communicate value or to present well, watch how we speak, the words we use. But if you miss the cues in the room, you're going to miss everything. If you miss the context of why they're there, in most cases, when I speak to people professionally, I'm listening for their pain points and I'm trying to help them solve those. But you need to actively listen and hear the needs, and the context is huge. So I would say people do talk about sharing the value, but I would say context matters just as much. You have to consider the setting, the topic being discussed, the relationships that already exist between the individuals in the room, and to interpret any cues accurately. This is a skill set, and we don't just need to present well, we need to listen well and be adaptable. Always ask for feedback You don't have to wait until the conversation is over to find out how it went. You can check in, periodically throughout the call. You need to make sure that you don't lose people, but also that you're not missing the context. So, practicing the pause, talking directly to your listeners or those who are learning from you, recapping and ask them if it's continue to go ahead and keep speaking. I think that's important because people get distracted. You can lose their attention. So, I think practicing active listening skills and reading between the lines is something that I wasn't taught. I
Mm.
was more taught how to present well and how to
Mhm.
speak well in front of others. So I would say it's a two-sided coin. As important as it is to present well, it's equally as important to listen and read between the lines.
I love that. And that's something you excel at. I've seen you do it is you check in with people and see, how they're doing and that really is endearing. Can you share an example of reading the room as a solution consultant, something that you've done in practice?
Well, just a few weeks ago, I was on a call and the folks on the call were really stuck about what they couldn't do and what they needed it to do, and I was able to change the narrative out of what we could do from what we couldn't do, and
Mm.
that took me really listening to the pain point. I think we have to give up the ego in any sales position. If someone wants to take over and share their screen or they want to tell you about what's really bothering them, you have got to put your agenda on hold
Mm.
because
It's a good
there's
one.
always another 30 minutes where you can get on a call and finish the sale. So I think that leaning into empathy, but also understanding that it's not about you, it's about the customer that you're serving and you're here to serve them. Whatever sale you're in, you want to essentially help them get to where they need to be, and that's why you're there in a position of service. So I think I would say being able to change the narrative and having the humility to put down the mic, so to speak, and hand
Mhm.
over as needed, changing the narrative. I hear your pain, I hear your frustration. Let's just pause and you show me and I'll listen and walk through this with you. So there's an element of humility that I would say has to come in with reading the room because you have to be willing to give up your position of influence to hear, in an empathetic way. And I think the more that you see of that, the more success you're going to have with reading the room and also winning deals.
Yeah, that's a really good point and something that you excel at because oftentimes sales leaders will come in with their own agenda because they want to control the meeting, right? and
Yeah.
then and that's good to a point, but then you come in with this connectedness and this ability to read the room and knowing when you need to ask different questions and really connect with them and let them just talk about what's going on for them and let them
Yeah.
get it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
People
great.
need to be heard.
What final advice would you give to anyone who wants to get better at this skill?
If you wanna get better at reading the room, you really need to have awareness. You need self-awareness and also an awareness of others around you. The ability to pick up on the energy of what people are throwing down comes with observing and asking questions from a place of genuine care. You want to make space for a solution. The intention is everything. If you come into a room, you wanna have success in the room, you need to have the humility and also the grace for people. When you learn to successfully read the room, you're speaking to get more out of the conversation. It helps you in real time make sure that the communication is clear and valuable. It also helps if you can hear what's not being said. This can help you draw out any concerns or confusion, which can be very important, frustration, or anything else that could muddle your message. So you have to listen not only for the positive, but also for areas where there may be concern. And it's your responsibility to be able to draw out any of those concerns. It's always a work in progress to learn how to read the room. It's an important life skill. And as we grow with AI and in tech, it's going to be even more important than ever to sharpen these skills, like reading the room, because it's gonna make a difference
Well
in
said.
winning. Yeah.
Well said.
So thank you,
Thank you,
Deirdre.
Christina.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Christina, what are one or two things that you do, or books you're reading, podcasts, or things that you do in practice?
Thanks, Deirdre. So I'm very into this. I'm a meditation teacher, and I think that mindset is very important. So a few things that I do, I'm always learning about the industry that I'm in. Whatever it is that I'm selling, I want to become the expert. So I listen to others that have gone before me. For example, on LinkedIn, I follow certain people that are in the solutions consulting space. I read their blogs, I listen to their podcasts, I listen to my own company's podcasts. I'm always looking at what we're doing and learning more. But one of the things that I do is I write things down and I use meditation. So I will visualize very simply if I want to see a deal close, I'll visualize what that feels like, what it looks like to have the deal close, what the celebration is going to feel like internally and look like within the company. And I also write things down. If there's something that I want, or if there's something that I want to see change, or there's something that I want to bring in, something new, for example, I write it
Right.
down and then
Mhm.
I visualize it happening. I think this practice of writing things down and seeing the success before it happens is significant in selling
Mm.
anything.
I do
So,
too.
yeah, that is something I do. I keep a journal and I write down all the things that I want and any ideas that I have. There's something to actually writing things down that's been
Mhm.
proven,
Yeah.
visualizing yourself in that space. I think it's very important for sellers to visualize themselves already winning the deal before they
Mhm.
even get on the call.
I love that. That's a great tip. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Okay, Christina. So, last thing, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active. I respond to my messages and it has my contact information. That would be a great place to find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Deirdre. You too. Thanks for having
Thanks.
me.